The illustration that we saw is fairly representative of the process of improvement methodology that any organization can put in place. In fact, many organizations use a similar methodology. Let's outline them. Step 1, identify the problem areas, set the project scope. We need to identify the problem area in such a fashion that the exercise leads to waste elimination and not into productivity paradox. We should not make wrong choices. The scope must lay out some of the broad objectives to be met. Step 2, we must have an accepted definition of what is value adding. So generally, you have activities which are value adding. There are certain activities which are non-value adding clearly, but within that, from a practical viewpoint, we can create a third category called necessary but not value adding. What do these three mean? Value adding, we know clearly. These are activities which the customers are willing to pay for. Non-value activities. All these activities for which the customer may not want to pay are called non-value adding. But what is this third category? Necessary but non-value adding. The set of activities that are to be eventually eliminated. You may have it for the time being because you can't do anything about it as of now. A classical example is inspection. If you can put a good process control, quality process control in place, inspection can be removed. So until then it has to be there. So such activities are called necessary but non-value adding. So this is the second step. Third step is to obtain measures to assess the process. Measures could be distance, time, the staff deployed, the categories of NVAs and various types of activities. All these we must do. Step 4, brainstorm improvement opportunities and develop a list of options which can be potentially implemented. Step 5, prioritize the options for implementation. As we saw in the illustration, in any such exercise, you will always find low-hanging fruits, medium-term solutions, and long-term solutions. We need to create that priority. Step 6, present the options, obtain the mandate from the management and the budgetary support. And finally, step 7, implement, measure the results post-implementation and document the kind of improvement that we have been able to make through this process improvement. So this 7-step methodology is quite structured, quite standardized, and in our illustration we actually saw most of these steps in a certain detail. The process improvement methodology which we saw also requires some kind of an organization structure through which these improvements are taken up. So what we will do is, now we will sketch a potential or a suggestive organization structure which can go along with such improvement projects. We said that we will identify some product or service which requires a certain kind of an improvement, and in this process we need to set the scope, measure the current status. So all these we need to do by mapping. So after mapping it at the overall level, we need to identify detailed projects, because once we do the mapping, we know we have a certain detail of the process, so we know where improvements lie. So out of that, we might carve out quite a few projects. Let me call it as project 1 and then project 2 and so on, maybe project N. So we identify all these projects, and for each of these identified projects which came out of an initial process mapping, we need to adopt the process improvement methodology that we just now talked about. So here is that schematic which shows the process improvement organization structure which could be used for improvement projects that we want to actually do in any productivity improvement exercise that we want to do. As we see, the process improvement methodology that we have seen just now is consistent with the philosophy of lean management. It will help organizations implement the waste elimination activities in a structured and a sustainable manner. You may want to reflect on the usefulness of this approach to address the larger issue of productivity management. One more issue of relevance to the topic that we are discussing is the role of specific performance metrics for productivity management. So far we haven't touched that aspect. We will see that in some detail in the next video.